The time has come. We begin.
The phone buzzed against David's thigh as he fumbled with his office keys. 3 missed calls from Emma. His daughter never called during school hours. "Dad, you need to come now. Mom collapsed in the parking lot. They're taking her to St. Mary's." The keys slipped from his fingers, clattering against the concrete. 23 years of marriage, and he'd never heard that kind of panic in Emma's voice. David's hands shook as he started the car. Traffic lights blurred past in a haze of red and green. His mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Sarah had been tired lately, complaining of headaches, but she always complained about something. He'd stopped listening. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Emma sat hunched in a plastic chair, her school uniform wrinkled. At 15, she looked like a child again. "Where's your brother?" David asked, wrapping his arms around her. "Tyler's driving here from the university. They won't tell me anything because I'm not 18. Dr. Martinez emerged from behind double doors, her expression carefully neutral. David had learned to read faces during his 20 years as an accountant. This wasn't good news. "Mr. Caldwell, your wife is stable, but we need to run some tests. The blood work shows some concerning markers." "What kind of markers?" "We suspect lymphoma. We'll know more after the biopsy." The word hit him like a physical blow. Cancer. The thing that happened to other families, to other wives. Not Sarah, not his Sarah who ran 5 miles every morning and alphabetized their spice rack. Emma's sob echoed off the sterile walls. 3 days later, Dr. Martinez confirmed their worst fears. Aggressive lymphoma stage 3. Without treatment, maybe 6 months. With treatment, decent odds but no guarantees. "The good news is she's responding well to the initial chemo," Dr. Martinez explained. "But I won't lie to you. This is going to be expensive, even with insurance." David nodded, already calculating. Their savings account held maybe $15,000. The house had some equity. His father's old farm in Wisconsin, inherited last year, might bring $60,000 if he could find a buyer. "Whatever it takes," he said. Tyler arrived that evening, his sophomore year at Northwestern suddenly irrelevant. At 19, he'd inherited David's quiet intensity and Sarah's stubborn streak. The family gathered around Sarah's hospital bed, her face pale but determined. "I'm going to beat this," she whispered. "I have too much to live for." David squeezed her hand. "We'll get through it." Over the next 3 months, David liquidated everything. The farm sold quickly to a development company. Their retirement accounts cashed out with penalties. He worked overtime, picking up weekend clients. Anything to pay for the treatments that insurance deemed experimental or not medically necessary. Sarah's recovery surprised everyone, especially her doctors. By month 4, her scans showed significant improvement. By month 6, she was back at work managing Fletcher's Fine Furniture, the upscale boutique where she'd worked for 8 years. "It's a miracle," Dr. Martinez said during their final appointment. "Your wife's resilience is remarkable." David felt the first real peace he'd experienced in months. They were broke but alive. They could rebuild. The anonymous text arrived on a Tuesday morning in October. "You saved a liar." David stared at the message. Wrong number, probably. He deleted it and focused on balancing the Morrison account. But something nagged at him. The timing felt intentional. That evening, Sarah seemed different. Energetic in a way she hadn't been since before the diagnosis. She'd started wearing perfume again, styled her hair differently. The shoulder-length brown waves that had fallen out during chemo were growing back, lighter and softer. "I'm going out with Rebecca tonight," she announced over dinner. "We're celebrating my 6-month mark." Emma looked up from her phone. "Mom, that's great. You deserve it." Tyler nodded absently, absorbed in his laptop. He'd transferred to the local community college to save money and stay close to home. David watched Sarah apply lipstick at the hallway mirror. Something felt off, but he couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was the dress. He'd never seen it before. Black and fitted, more expensive than their current budget allowed. "Where are you going?" he asked. "That new wine bar downtown. Harper's, I think." She kissed his cheek, leaving a faint lipstick print. The perfume was new too. Not the light floral scent she'd worn for years, but something heavier, more sophisticated. David tried to shake off his unease. She was recovering, rediscovering herself. That was natural, healthy even. He should be happy. But the anonymous text haunted him. "You saved a liar." 2 weeks later, David noticed other changes. Sarah's phone, previously left carelessly on counters, now stayed glued to her side. She'd developed a habit of stepping outside to take calls. When he asked about work, Her answers were vague. Just the usual chaos at Fletcher's, she'd say. Ray's got us reorganizing the entire showroom. Ray. She'd mentioned him before, Sarah's boss at the furniture store. Raymond Fletcher, the owner's son who'd taken over the business after his father's heart attack. David had met him once at a company Christmas party years ago. Tall, confident, expensive suit. The kind of man who called everyone buddy and remembered no one's name. He's really turned the place around, Sarah continued. We're focusing on high-end restoration work now. Custom pieces for wealthy clients. David nodded, but something in her tone bothered him. Too casual, like she was reading from a script. The credit card statement arrived in November. David handled all their finances, a habit formed during their early marriage when Sarah admitted she was terrible with money. The charges were small at first. Lunches at restaurants they couldn't afford, a massage at an upscale spa, clothes from boutiques he'd never heard of. Sarah, he said that evening, spreading the statement across their kitchen table. We need to talk about these charges. She glanced at the papers without really seeing them. Oh, those. Ray's been taking the team out to celebrate our sales numbers, and I needed some new clothes for client meetings. Honey, we're still paying off medical bills. We can't afford— I know our financial situation, David. Her voice carried an edge he'd rarely heard. I'm the one who almost died, remember? I think I've earned the right to feel human again. The accusation stung. Had he been that controlling, that selfish? He folded the statement and said nothing more. December brought more changes. Sarah started working late several nights a week. Weekend trips to furniture shows in Milwaukee and Chicago. She seemed lighter, happier, but distant, like she was performing the role of wife and mother from memory. Tyler noticed it first. Mom's acting weird, he said one evening after Sarah left for another work event. Emma defended her immediately. She's been through hell. She deserves to have some fun. It's not about fun, Tyler replied. It's like she's a different person. David wanted to disagree, but he couldn't. The woman who'd alphabetized their spice rack and color-coordinated their closets had become someone who left dishes in the sink and forgot to pick up milk. The woman who'd once planned their family vacations months in advance now made decisions impulsively, without consultation. She's finding herself again, David said, trying to convince himself as much as the kids. But late at night, lying beside Sarah's sleeping form, he wondered who this new person really was. The revelation came accidentally. David was looking for his reading glasses and grabbed Sarah's purse from the kitchen counter. Her phone buzzed with a text notification. The screen lit up, showing a message from R. Last night was incredible. When can we get away again? David's hands went numb. He set the phone down carefully, his mind blank. Then he picked it up again, scrolling through the message history with shaking fingers. Months of messages, intimate conversations that made his stomach turn. Photos he couldn't bring himself to examine closely. References to hotel rooms, weekend trips, lies upon lies upon lies. The last message from Sarah read, David suspects nothing. He's so focused on the bills, he doesn't see anything else. David sank into a kitchen chair, the phone still in his hands. How long? How many of those late nights, those weekend trips, those new clothes purchased with money they didn't have? He thought about the farm in Wisconsin, sold to pay for treatments that had saved the life of a woman who was betraying him. The retirement funds, cashed out with penalties. The overtime hours, the extra clients, the sleepless nights worrying about money while she was sleeping with another man. Tyler found him there an hour later. Dad, you look sick. David looked up at his son. 19 years old, home from college to help the family through a crisis that wasn't what it seemed. How could he explain this? How could he destroy Tyler's image of his mother? Just tired, David said, slipping Sarah's phone back into her purse. But Tyler's sharp eyes had caught something. What's wrong? David met his son's gaze. Tyler had sacrificed his dreams of Northwestern, had worked part-time jobs to help with expenses, had held the family together when David was drowning in medical bills and fear. He deserved the truth. Your mother is having an affair. The words hung in the air between them. Tyler's face went through a series of emotions, shock, disbelief, then a slow, painful understanding. With who? Her boss, Ray. Tyler sat down heavily. How long? I don't know. Months, maybe since she went back to work. They sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Tyler spoke. What are you going to do? David didn't know. His first instinct was to confront Sarah, to demand explanations. to try to salvage their marriage. But something colder was taking root in his chest. A calculating part of his mind was already working through the implications. "I need time to think." "Don't tell Emma yet," Tyler said quietly. "She'll fall apart." David nodded. Emma idolized her mother, had spent months nursing Sarah through the worst of her treatment. The betrayal would devastate her. That night, David lay awake listening to Sarah breathe beside him. She'd come home late, smelling of wine and lies. In the darkness, he began to plan. The next morning, David called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of going to the office, he drove to the public library and spent hours researching divorce law, asset protection, private investigators. By noon, he had the beginnings of a strategy. His first stop was Mitchell Barnes, the family attorney who'd handled his father's estate. Mitchell was a calm, methodical man in his 60s who'd seen every variation of human betrayal. "I need to protect what's left of our assets," David explained. "My wife is having an affair, and I suspect she's been using our credit cards to fund it." Mitchell nodded grimly. "How much are we talking about?" "Maybe 10,000 over the past few months, but that's not the point. We're already in debt from her medical expenses. She's spending money we don't have on another man." "Do you have proof of the affair?" David showed him screenshots he'd taken of Sarah's phone messages. Mitchell studied them carefully. "This is pretty conclusive. The question is, what do you want? Reconciliation or divorce?" David had been asking himself the same question. 6 months ago, he would have fought for his marriage. But the woman sleeping beside him wasn't the woman he'd married. That woman had died, replaced by someone who could look him in the eye and lie without flinching. "I want her to understand what she's done, what she's cost us." "That's not a legal strategy, David. That's revenge." "Maybe, but I need options." Mitchell leaned back in his chair. "Let's start with asset protection. We can establish a trust for your children, transfer property before she realizes what's happening. As for the rest, well, that depends how far you want to take this." David left the law office with a folder full of documents and a clear sense of purpose. For the first time in months, he felt in control. That evening, he acted normal. He asked about Sarah's day, listened to her fabricated stories about difficult clients and inventory problems. He helped Emma with her homework and discussed Tyler's classes. But underneath the domestic routine, he was planning. Over the next week, David quietly gathered evidence. He installed tracking software on his computer that logged Sarah's online activity when she used it. He researched Raymond Fletcher, learning about the man who destroyed his marriage. Ray Fletcher was 38, divorced twice, no children. His first wife had left him for infidelity. His second wife, Gina, had taken half his assets in the divorce settlement just 2 years ago. He had a reputation around town as a charmer who preyed on vulnerable women. David found Gina Fletcher through social media. She lived in a condo across town, worked as a real estate agent. Her profile photos showed an attractive blonde woman in her 40s with angry eyes. He called her on a Friday afternoon. "Mrs. Fletcher, my name is David Caldwell. I think we need to talk about your ex-husband." There was a long pause. "What about him?" "He's sleeping with my wife." Another pause, then a bitter laugh. "Which one?" He usually has several going at once. They met at a coffee shop near Gina's office. She was smaller than her photos suggested, but her eyes held the same anger David had seen online. "How long have you known?" she asked. "A few weeks. You?" "I've been watching Ray for months. Old habits die hard, I guess. Your wife isn't his first since our divorce. She won't be his last." Gina ordered another coffee and studied David across the small table. "What do you want from me?" "Information. You know him better than anyone." "What I know is that Ray Fletcher destroys everything he touches. He's charming, generous when it serves his purposes, and completely without conscience. He told me once that marriage was just a long con, that the trick was making women think they were special." David felt sick. "What kind of information?" "Ray's been having financial problems since our divorce. The furniture business is struggling, but he's too proud to admit it. He's been looking for investors, someone to bankroll his lifestyle." The implication hit David like a physical blow. "You think he's using Sarah for money?" "I think Ray Fletcher doesn't do anything without calculating the benefit to himself. Your wife gets cancer, you liquidate assets to pay for treatment. Suddenly she's got access to whatever's left. It's perfect timing from his perspective." David's hands clenched around his coffee cup. "She doesn't have access to much. We're broke." "Are you sure? Joint credit cards, retirement accounts, property?" Ray's very good at helping women discover assets they didn't know they had. David thought about the credit card charges, the new clothes, the expensive restaurants. Had Sarah been more involved in their finances than she'd let on? There's something else, Gina continued. Ray likes to record things, photos, videos, conversations. He calls it insurance, but really he just gets off on having power over people. Are you saying he might have evidence of their affair? I'm saying Ray Fletcher always covers his bases. If your wife is spending money on him, he's documenting it. And if she's been indiscreet, he's probably got that documented too. They parted ways with an understanding. Gina would keep David informed of Ray's activities, and David would let her know if he found evidence of financial impropriety. It wasn't exactly friendship, but it was alliance born of mutual betrayal. That weekend, Sarah announced she was going to a furniture convention in Chicago, a 3-day event that would require her to stay overnight. It's a great opportunity for Fletchers, she explained. Ray thinks we can land some major accounts. David nodded and wished her luck. As soon as her car left the driveway, he began his search. Sarah's home office was a small room next to their bedroom, filled with furniture catalogs and fabric samples. David had rarely been inside, respecting her workspace. Now he went through everything systematically. In the bottom drawer of her desk, he found a folder marked Personal. Inside were credit card statements he'd never seen, for an account opened in Sarah's name only. The charges were devastating. Hotels in Milwaukee and Chicago, expensive restaurants, clothing stores, jewelry, cash advances totaling thousands of dollars. The account had been opened 2 months after Sarah returned to work. The debt was approaching $15,000. David sat on the floor of Sarah's office, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, and felt something inside him break, not his heart. That had broken weeks ago, something deeper, his faith in the fundamental decency of the world. He photographed every document, every receipt, every incriminating detail. Then he put everything back exactly as he'd found it. Tyler was waiting in the kitchen when David came downstairs. Find anything? David showed him the photos on his phone. Tyler's face went pale as he scrolled through the evidence. Dad, she's stolen from us. Yes. What are you going to do? David thought about Gina Fletcher's words, about Ray's reputation, about his own destroyed savings and uncertain future. I'm going to make them both pay for what they've done. On Monday morning, while Sarah was at work, David met with Mitchell Barnes again. This time, he brought documentation. She's been hiding assets and accumulating debt in her name only, David explained. Can we use this in a divorce? Mitchell studied the papers carefully. Absolutely. This shows financial deception and marital misconduct, but David, are you sure divorce is what you want? This kind of litigation gets ugly. She's been stealing from us while I worked overtime to pay her medical bills. She's been lying to our children, teaching them that betrayal is acceptable. Divorce isn't enough. What are you thinking? David had been thinking about it for days. I want to expose them, both of them. I want everyone who knows us to understand what they've done. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. That's a dangerous path. Public humiliation can backfire legally. What if I could prove financial crimes, fraud, embezzlement? That changes things, but you'd need solid evidence. David thought about Gina's comments regarding Ray's financial problems and his habit of finding female investors. Give me a few more weeks. David's investigation expanded. He spent his lunch breaks researching Fletcher's fine furniture, studying public records and business filings. The company was indeed struggling, carrying significant debt and facing tax problems. More interesting were the restoration projects Sarah had mentioned, high-end custom work for wealthy clients, often involving large cash payments, the kind of transactions that could easily hide financial irregularities. David also began following Sarah and Ray. Not stalking, he was too careful for that, but strategic observation. He learned their patterns, their favorite restaurants, their preferred hotels. On a Thursday evening in January, David watched from his car as Sarah and Ray entered the Marriott downtown. They looked comfortable together, familiar. Sarah wore a dress David had never seen, her hair styled professionally. She looked beautiful and completely at ease with her deception. David felt nothing watching them. No anger, no sadness, just cold calculation. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Now it was simply a matter of consequences. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Emma, still unaware of her mother's affair, mentioned that Ray had given Sarah an expensive bracelet for Christmas. Mom said it was a bonus from work, Emma said. But isn't it weird for a boss to give jewelry to an employee? David examined the bracelet the next time Sarah left it on the bathroom counter. The receipt, carelessly left in the box, showed a purchase price of $800, paid for with cash. That weekend, while Sarah was supposedly at another furniture show, David drove to Fletcher's store. He'd never seen Ray's business up close, had only heard Sarah's descriptions of its success and sophistication. The reality was different. Fletcher's fine furniture occupied a converted warehouse in an area of town David rarely visited. The showroom was impressive enough, filled with expensive pieces and elegant displays, but something felt hollow about it. David browsed casually, playing the role of a potential customer. The salesperson, a young woman named Jennifer, was eager to help. "Are you looking for anything specific?" she asked. "My wife mentioned you do custom restoration work, high-end pieces for special clients." Jennifer's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "That's more Mr. Fletcher's area. He handles our VIP customers personally." "I see. What kind of pieces does he usually work with?" "Antiques mostly, European furniture, art pieces, the kind of thing wealthy collectors want restored to original condition." David nodded thoughtfully. "That must be expensive work." "Very. Mr. Fletcher says his restoration clients often pay more for the work than the original piece was worth." After 20 minutes of casual conversation, David had learned several interesting facts. Ray handled all high-end transactions personally. Payments were often made in cash. The restoration work was done off-site at a warehouse Ray rented across town, and Jennifer had never actually seen any of the finished pieces. David thanked Jennifer and left, his mind racing. Cash transactions, off-site work, no visible finished products. Either Ray Fletcher was running a very discreet business, or he was running a scam. That evening, David called Gina Fletcher. "Tell me about Ray's restoration business." "What restoration business?" "He's supposedly doing high-end custom work for wealthy clients. Cash payments, off-site warehouse." Gina was quiet for a moment. "David, Ray doesn't know anything about furniture restoration. He can barely tell mahogany from maple. That business was always his father's expertise." "Then what's he doing?" "If I had to guess, money laundering, taking cash from questionable sources, running it through fake restoration invoices, and keeping a percentage for himself." David felt pieces clicking into place. "And my wife? Perfect cover. An employee who can sign invoices, handle paperwork, provide legitimacy, someone who's desperate enough to overlook irregularities. She might not even know what she's involved in. She knows enough. Ray doesn't trust anyone completely." David hung up, feeling like he'd found the missing piece of a puzzle. Sarah wasn't just having an affair and spending their money. She was involved in Ray's criminal activities, willingly or not. The next step was surveillance. David couldn't afford a private investigator, but he could afford a few pieces of technology. Hidden cameras, audio recorders, GPS trackers, all legally available, all technically permissible if used on his own wife's car and in his own home. Over the course of 2 weeks, David accumulated hours of evidence. Conversations between Sarah and Ray about special clients and cash projects. Video of Sarah meeting unknown men at expensive restaurants, discussing transactions that had nothing to do with furniture. The most damning evidence came from a recording device David had placed in Sarah's car. Sarah and Ray driving to one of their hotel meetings, discussing their relationship with remarkable candor. "David still thinks you married him for love," Ray said, his voice carrying cruel amusement. "I did love him once," Sarah replied. "But that was before I understood what I was capable of, before I met someone who saw my potential. And now? Now I see him as what he is, a small man with small dreams who was useful when I needed security. But I need more than security now." "What about the kids?" "Tyler's smart enough to understand eventually. Emma will blame David for losing me. Children always blame the parent who stays." David had to pull over to the side of the road after listening to that conversation. The woman he'd married, the woman he'd saved, the woman he'd given everything to, was discussing their children like they were chess pieces in her game. That night, David made his final decision. This wasn't about saving his marriage anymore. This was about justice. He called Mitchell Barnes the next morning. "I need to file divorce papers immediately, and I need to report suspected financial crimes to the appropriate authorities." "David, are you sure? Once you start this process, there's no going back." "There was no going back the moment she chose to betray us. I'm just making it official." Mitchell scheduled an emergency meeting for that afternoon. David brought everything: Financial records, surveillance evidence, documentation of the secret credit card accounts, and suspicious business transactions. This is extensive, Mitchell said, reviewing the materials. You've essentially built a case for infidelity, financial fraud, and possibly racketeering. What's my best strategy? First, we protect what assets you have left. Transfer the house deed to Tyler's name. He's 19, legally an adult, close joint accounts. File for emergency spousal support to prevent further financial damage. And the criminal aspects? I'll contact the district attorney's office. With this level of documentation, they'll almost certainly open an investigation. David left Mitchell's office feeling lighter than he had in months. The secret was ending. The lies were about to be exposed. Whatever happened next, he would face it with his integrity intact. That evening, Sarah came home late as usual. She kissed David's cheek and asked about his day, her performance of normalcy so practiced it was almost believable. "How was the restoration project?" David asked. "Complicated. Ray's working with a particularly demanding client, but the money's good." "I'm sure it is." Something in his tone made Sarah look at him more carefully. For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw calculation in her eyes. "David, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, just tired." She nodded and went upstairs to shower. David waited until he heard the water running, then gathered the kids in the living room. "We need to talk." Emma looked up from her phone. Tyler closed his laptop. Both recognized the seriousness in David's voice. "Your mother is having an affair with her boss, Ray Fletcher. She's been stealing money from our family to fund the relationship. Tomorrow, she's going to be served with divorce papers and possibly arrested for financial crimes." Emma's face went white. "Dad, that's not—" "Mom wouldn't—" Tyler put his arm around his sister. "Em, we've known something was wrong for months." "This is a mistake," Emma said, tears starting. "Mom loves us. She loves our family." David knelt in front of his daughter. "I know this is hard to understand. I know you want to believe the best about your mother, but I need you both to be prepared for what's coming." "What's going to happen to us?" Emma asked. "We're going to be okay. The house is safe. Our financial situation will stabilize once the divorce is final, but it's going to be difficult for a while." Emma ran upstairs to her room, slamming the door. Tyler remained in the living room with David. "How bad is it really?" Tyler asked. "Bad. Your mother has been involved in money laundering through Ray's business. There's going to be a criminal investigation. She could go to prison." Tyler absorbed this silently. "And you're sure? About all of it?" David showed him selected recordings and documents. Tyler's face hardened as he reviewed the evidence. "She called us chess pieces," Tyler said quietly. "Yes. Then she gets what she deserves." The next morning, David went to work as usual. At 10 o'clock, a process server would arrive at Fletcher's Fine Furniture to serve Sarah with divorce papers. At 10:30, federal agents would arrive to execute search warrants for the business and Ray's personal residence. David had timed everything carefully. Sarah would be trapped at work, surrounded by colleagues and customers, when her world collapsed. She would have no opportunity to warn Ray, no chance to destroy evidence, no way to control the narrative. His phone buzzed at 10:15. Sarah, calling from work. "David, what the hell is going on? Someone just served me with papers saying you're divorcing me." "I am divorcing you." "Based on what? We can work through whatever problems we're having." "Can we work through your affair with Ray Fletcher? Can we work through the $15,000 you've stolen from our family? Can we work through your involvement in money laundering?" Silence on the other end of the line. "Sarah, are you there?" "David, I can explain everything. Just give me a chance to come home and we can talk." "You can't come home. I've had the locks changed. Your belongings are in storage unit 247 on Riverside Drive. The key is with Mitchell Barnes." "You can't do this. I live there. My children live there." "Your children live with me. You live wherever Ray Fletcher keeps his criminals." David hung up and turned off his phone. He had work to do, clients to see, a normal life to maintain while his marriage imploded according to plan. The first news report appeared online at noon. Local furniture store raided in financial crimes investigation. By evening, it was the lead story on 3 local television stations. David watched the coverage with Tyler and Emma. Emma had barely spoken since the previous night, alternating between denial and devastation. Tyler sat silently, his jaw set with anger that reminded David of himself. The reporter stood in front of Fletcher's Fine Furniture as federal agents carried boxes of evidence to waiting vehicles. Sources tell us the investigation involves suspected money laundering and tax evasion. The store's owner, Raymond Fletcher, was taken into custody this afternoon. Several employees are also being questioned. The camera cut to footage of Ray Fletcher being led away in handcuffs. Then, devastating footage of Sarah being escorted from the building by federal agents. She looked directly at the camera, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. Emma sobbed when she saw her mother on television. Tyler's expression never changed. David felt nothing. The woman on the screen was a stranger who had stolen his wife's identity and destroyed his family. He felt no more connection to her than he would to any other criminal on the evening news. His phone started ringing at 7 o'clock. Friends, neighbors, co-workers who had seen the news. David let them all go to voicemail. He wasn't ready to explain, wasn't interested in sympathy or judgment, but he did answer when Gina Fletcher called. "I saw the news," she said. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected. How about you?" "Satisfied. I've been waiting 2 years for Ray to get what he deserved." "What happens now?" "Now we watch them destroy each other. Ray will try to pin everything on Sarah to reduce his sentence. Sarah will claim she was manipulated, that she didn't know what was happening. Neither story will be entirely false, but neither will be entirely true either." David understood. They're both guilty. Yes, and now they'll both pay. The criminal investigation moved quickly. Ray Fletcher's financial records revealed a complex scheme involving fake restoration invoices, cash payments from unknown sources, and systematic tax evasion. Sarah's role was significant. She had signed fraudulent documents, handled illegal transactions, and helped hide assets from authorities. But more damaging than the criminal charges was the social destruction. Their story became local legend, discussed in coffee shops and grocery stores, shared on social media with a mixture of fascination and horror. David's coworkers were supportive, but awkward. His neighbors were curious, but respectful. But Sarah faced a different reception. She was the woman who had cheated on her devoted husband, the woman who had stolen from her family, the woman who had chosen criminal romance over domestic stability. When she was released on bail after 3 days in jail, Sarah found herself effectively exiled from her own life. Her job was gone, her reputation destroyed, her friends unwilling to associate with her legal troubles. She tried to contact David multiple times, leaving voicemails that progressed from defiant to pleading to desperate. "David, please call me back. I know you're angry, but we can fix this. David, I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you and the kids. David, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Please help me." David deleted each message without responding. Mitchell Barnes had been clear. Any communication with Sarah could complicate the divorce proceedings and potentially interfere with the criminal case. But Tyler surprised him by asking to hear the messages. "I want to know what she's saying," Tyler explained. They listened together to Sarah's increasingly desperate pleas. Tyler's face remained impassive until the final message, recorded just that morning. "David, I know you hate me now, but please don't turn my children against me. Tyler, Emma, if you're listening, I love you more than anything in the world. I made terrible choices, but everything I did was because I was trying to find a way to be happy again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Tyler looked at David. "She still doesn't get it." "What do you mean?" "She's not sorry for what she did. She's sorry she got caught. There's a difference." Emma, who had been eavesdropping from the kitchen, entered the living room with tears streaming down her face. "How can you be so cold about this? She's our mother." Tyler stood up to face his sister. "She stopped being our mother when she chose Ray Fletcher over our family, when she stole money Dad needed for our futures, when she called us chess pieces. People make mistakes." "This wasn't a mistake, Em. This was a choice, a series of choices, made over months, each one hurting us more than the last." Emma looked at David desperately. "Dad, tell him he's wrong. Tell him Mom can come home." David studied his daughter's face, seeing Sarah's features mixed with his own. Emma had inherited her mother's beauty, but also her capacity for self-deception. "Your mother can't come home because this isn't her home anymore. She chose a different life, and now she has to live with that choice." "But what about forgiveness? What about second chances? Some things can't be forgiven, Emma. Some damage can't be repaired." Emma ran upstairs, leaving David and Tyler alone. "She'll understand eventually," Tyler said quietly. "I hope so." 3 weeks after Sarah's arrest, David received an unexpected visitor. Sarah's sister Jennifer arrived unannounced on a Saturday morning, her face tight with anger. "David, we need to talk." Jennifer had always disliked him, considering him unworthy of her sophisticated sister. She was a corporate lawyer in Chicago, successful and unmarried, who had made it clear that she thought Sarah had settled for less than she deserved. "This is your fault," Jennifer said without preamble. "Sarah never would have done any of this if you'd been a better husband." David invited her inside, curious about her strategy. Jennifer surveyed the living room like she was cataloging evidence for a lawsuit. "You emotionally neglected her," Jennifer continued. "You took her for granted, treated her like a housekeeper instead of a partner. When she got cancer, you made her feel like a burden." "Did Sarah tell you that?" "She didn't have to. I saw how you interacted with her, cold, distant, more concerned with your precious finances than her emotional needs." David nodded thoughtfully. "So her solution was to steal from our children and commit federal crimes? She made mistakes because she was desperate. You drove her to desperation." Tyler appeared at the top of the stairs, having heard raised voices. Jennifer looked up at him with what might have been sympathy. "Tyler, honey, I know this is hard for you, but your father has poisoned you against your mother. She loves you more than anything." "Did she love me when she called me a chess piece?" Tyler asked, coming down the stairs. "Did she love Emma when she said Emma would blame Dad for losing her?" Jennifer's confidence faltered. "What are you talking about?" Tyler looked at David, who nodded permission. Tyler played one of the recordings from Sarah's car, the conversation where she and Ray had discussed the children with such casual cruelty. Jennifer listened in growing horror. When the recording ended, she was pale. That's not Sarah. She wouldn't say those things." "That's exactly Sarah," Tyler said. "That's who she became when she decided our family wasn't enough for her." Jennifer gathered herself, falling back on her legal training. "Even if she said those things, David, your response was extreme, destroying her life, having her arrested, turning her children against her. You're not innocent in this." "You're right," David said calmly. "I'm not innocent. I'm guilty of working overtime to pay for her medical expenses. I'm guilty of liquidating my inheritance to save her life. I'm guilty of trusting her when she lied to my face for months. That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant. You meant I should have been a better husband, more attentive, more romantic, more like Ray Fletcher." Jennifer flinched at the name. "But here's what you don't understand, Jennifer. I was a good husband to the woman I married. But that woman died somewhere between the diagnosis and the cure. The woman who replaced her was a stranger who happened to look like my wife. She was finding herself again after a traumatic experience. She was finding herself in another man's bed while I worked 2 jobs to pay off her medical bills." Jennifer had no response to that. She looked around the room again, but this time her survey seemed less confident. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Nothing. But since you're here, let me tell you what's going to happen. Sarah is going to be convicted of multiple felonies. She's going to serve time in federal prison. When she gets out, she'll be a middle-aged woman with no career prospects, no savings, and no family. Her children will forgive her. Tyler already understands what she is. Emma will understand eventually. And I'll make sure they both know that their mother chose this path freely." Jennifer stood up, her composure cracking. "You're destroying her out of spite." "I'm not destroying her. She destroyed herself. I'm just refusing to clean up the mess." After Jennifer left, Tyler sat with David in the kitchen. "Do you think Emma will really understand?" Tyler asked. "Eventually. She's young and she wants to believe the best about her mother. But Sarah's actions speak louder than my words." "What if Emma chooses Mom's side?" David had been dreading this possibility. Emma was 15, old enough to make her own choices about which parent to live with. If she blamed David for Sarah's downfall, he could lose his daughter as well as his wife. "Then I'll love her anyway," David said, "and I'll hope that someday she'll see the truth." The divorce proceedings began in earnest in March. Mitchell Barnes had warned David that Sarah would likely contest everything, claim she was the sufferer of David's emotional misuse, and demand alimony based on her inability to work due to her legal troubles. She exceeded even Mitchell's cynical expectations. Sarah's attorney, an ambitious young woman named Patricia Lawson, filed motions claiming David had orchestrated Sarah's arrest to gain advantage in the divorce. She argued that Sarah had been manipulated by Ray Fletcher, that she was as much a sufferer as David, and that she deserved half of all marital assets plus substantial alimony. "She's claiming mental distress caused by your campaign of maltreatment," Mitchell explained to David. "She wants compensation for damage to her reputation and career prospects. David almost laughed. She wants me to pay her for destroying our marriage? She wants to portray herself as a sufferer of both Ray Fletcher and you. The narrative is that she was vulnerable after her cancer treatment, manipulated by Fletcher, then persecuted by her vindictive husband. Can she win with that argument? Probably not. The evidence against her is too strong. But she can make the process expensive and painful. David authorized Mitchell to fight every motion, contest every claim, and drag the proceedings out as long as necessary. If Sarah wanted a war, he would give her one. The first court hearing was a revelation. Sarah arrived looking fragile and victimized, her hair grown out but still shorter than before her illness, wearing clothes that emphasized her recent weight loss. She had crafted an image of wounded femininity that was quite different from the confident woman who had strutted into hotels with Ray Fletcher. But Patricia Lawson's strategy fell apart when Mitchell introduced the surveillance evidence. Recordings of Sarah discussing the children as chess pieces, financial records showing her systematic theft from the family accounts, video of her meeting with Ray's criminal associates. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Helen Morrison, listened to the evidence with visible disgust. "Mrs. Caldwell," Judge Morrison said, "I've reviewed the financial records your husband's attorney has provided. You opened credit card accounts in your name only, used them to fund an extramarital affair, and hid this debt from your husband while he was working to pay your medical expenses. Is this accurate?" Sarah's lawyer whispered something to her. Sarah nodded reluctantly. "Yes, Your Honor, but I was in a very vulnerable state emotionally. I wasn't thinking clearly." "Were you thinking clearly enough to sign fraudulent invoices for your lover's money laundering operation?" Sarah's face went white. "I didn't know what those invoices were for." Judge Morrison held up a transcript. "This is a recording of you discussing those invoices with Mr. Fletcher. You seem quite aware of their fraudulent nature." Patricia Lawson objected, but the damage was done. Sarah's sufferer narrative had crumbled under the weight of evidence. The judge denied all of Sarah's motions for temporary alimony and asset preservation. She awarded David full custody of both children and possession of the family home. Sarah was granted supervised visitation once per week, pending the outcome of her criminal trial. Outside the courthouse, Sarah confronted David for the first time since her arrest. "You did this," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "You orchestrated all of this to destroy me." "I documented what you did," David replied calmly. "The destruction was your choice. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. You stopped loving me the first time you climbed into bed with Ray Fletcher. Everything since then has been performance." Sarah looked around desperately, perhaps hoping for public sympathy. But the courthouse steps were empty, except for a few reporters who had covered the hearing. "What about our children? What about Emma? What about them? You called them chess pieces, remember?" "I was angry. People say things they don't mean when they're angry." "No, Sarah. People reveal who they really are when they're angry. And you revealed that you see our children as tools for your manipulation." Sarah's composure finally cracked completely. "I hate you," she whispered. "I hate what you've become. I've become someone who refuses to be lied to. If you hate that, then you never really knew me at all." David walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone on the courthouse steps. The reporters approached her for comment, but she fled to her car without speaking. That evening, Emma confronted David in the kitchen. "I saw the news coverage of the hearing," she said. "They made Mom look like a monster." "The evidence made your mother look like what she is. She's not a monster. She's sick, she's confused, she made mistakes." David set down his coffee and studied his daughter's face. Emma was beautiful like her mother, but she had inherited Sarah's capacity for self-deception, as well as her features. "Emma, your mother committed federal crimes. She stole from our family. She betrayed our trust in the most fundamental way possible. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices. But she's still our mother. Yes, and she'll always be your mother. But that doesn't mean her actions don't have consequences." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I want to go live with her." David felt his heart break a little. He had been expecting this, but it still hurt. "You can't live with her right now. She doesn't have a stable residence, and the court has ordered supervised visitation only after her trial then, when things calm down. If that's what you decide when you're 18, I won't try to stop you." Emma ran upstairs, slamming her door. Tyler emerged from the living room where he'd been pretending to watch television. "She'll figure it out," Tyler said quietly. "Maybe. Or maybe she'll choose to believe her mother's version of events. Then she'll have to live with the consequences of that choice, too. David looked at his son with new respect. Tyler had aged years in the past few months, forced to grow up quickly by circumstances beyond his control. But he had emerged from the crisis with his integrity intact and his priorities clear. "I'm proud of you," David said. "I learned from you. You showed me what it means to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. I hope Emma learns that lesson too." She will, eventually. Sarah's criminal trial began in June. David attended every day, not out of concern for Sarah, but to ensure that justice was served. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Financial records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations, and testimony from federal agents painted a picture of systematic criminal activity. Ray Fletcher had already pleaded guilty to money laundering and tax evasion in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony against Sarah was devastating. He portrayed her as an eager co-conspirator who had helped him hide assets and deceive investigators. Sarah's defense was that she had been manipulated by Ray, that her cancer treatment had left her emotionally vulnerable, and that she had been coerced into illegal activities she didn't understand. The jury didn't buy it. After 3 days of deliberation, they found Sarah guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit money laundering, tax evasion, and fraud. Judge Morrison sentenced Sarah to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. She also ordered Sarah to pay restitution of nearly $50,000 to the sufferers of the money laundering scheme. David felt no satisfaction watching Sarah led away in handcuffs. She looked broken, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who had once managed their household with military precision. But he also felt no sympathy. She had made her choices, and now she would live with the consequences. Emma was devastated by the sentencing. She had attended the trial sporadically, still hoping for some evidence that would exonerate her mother, or at least explain her actions in a sympathetic light. 3 years, Emma sobbed that night. "She'll miss my graduation, my senior year, everything." "She missed those things when she chose Ray Fletcher over our family," Tyler said bluntly. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Em. But it's what happened." David tried to comfort his daughter, but she pulled away from him. "This is your fault," she said. "You could have forgiven her. You could have worked things out, but you chose revenge instead. I chose justice. You chose to destroy our family." Emma's words hurt more than David expected. Had he chosen revenge over reconciliation? Had his desire for justice become something darker and more destructive? But then he remembered the recordings, the financial records, the months of lies and manipulation. He remembered working overtime to pay for medical bills while Sarah spent their money on another man. He remembered her calling their children chess pieces. "Your mother destroyed our family when she chose to betray us," David said quietly. "I just refused to pretend it hadn't happened." Emma looked at him with disgust and went to her room. David sat alone in the kitchen, wondering if he had won or lost. Over the following months, life gradually returned to a new normal. Tyler flourished in his college courses, choosing to major in business with a focus on ethics and corporate responsibility. Emma struggled with depression and anger, but she began seeing a therapist who helped her process her mother's betrayal and her own complicated feelings about the situation. David threw himself into work, building his accounting practice and establishing a reputation for integrity that attracted clients who valued honesty over convenience. Financially, the family was better off than they had been in years. Without Sarah's secret spending and legal expenses, David could save money and plan for the children's futures. But the social cost was significant. Old friends were uncomfortable around David, unsure how to navigate the wreckage of his marriage. Some blamed him for being too harsh, too unforgiving. Others whispered that he must have driven Sarah to her affair through neglect or misuse. David stopped caring about their opinions. He had learned to distinguish between people who supported him based on facts and people who judged him based on gossip and assumptions. Gina Fletcher remained his most unlikely ally. She had testified against Ray in both his trial and Sarah's, helping to ensure their convictions. She and David developed a friendship based on mutual understanding of betrayal and the difficult process of rebuilding after deception. "Do you ever regret it?" Gina asked one evening over coffee. "Going as far as you did?" David considered the question seriously. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Sarah made choices that forced my hand. But I don't regret holding her accountable for what she did." Even if it means losing Emma? That was the question that haunted David most. Emma had grown increasingly distant. more sympathetic to her mother's narrative of victimization. She visited Sarah in prison regularly and came home with stories of her mother's suffering and regret. "Mom says she's changed," Emma reported after one visit. "She says she understands now how much she hurt us." "What do you think?" David asked. "I think she's learned her lesson. I think she deserves a second chance." David didn't argue, but he wondered if Sarah had truly changed, or if she was simply performing contrition for Emma's benefit. The woman who had called her children chess pieces, who had stolen from her family while her husband worked overtime to pay her medical bills, who had committed federal crimes to fund her affair, had that woman really experienced a moral awakening in prison? The answer came 18 months into Sarah's sentence, when Emma received a letter that she left open on the kitchen table. David hadn't intended to read it, but Emma's name caught his eye. The letter was from Sarah, and it was nothing like the remorseful communications Emma had been describing. "My darling Emma," the letter began, "I hope you're staying strong while I'm away. I know your father has been poisoning you against me, but you have to remember that everything I did was because I was trying to build a better life for us. Ray promised me financial security that your father never could provide. I made mistakes, but my intentions were good. When I get out, we'll start fresh, just you and me. We can move somewhere new, somewhere people don't know our history. You're almost 18, so you can choose where you want to live. I've been thinking about California, maybe San Diego. Warm weather, new opportunities. Don't let your father convince you that I'm a bad person. I'm the same mother who took care of you when you were sick, who helped you with your homework, who taught you to be strong and independent. Your father wants you to hate me because he can't stand that I found happiness with someone else. I love you more than anything in the world. Stay strong, and remember that everything I went through was worth it if it means we can be together again." David read the letter twice, feeling sick. Even from prison, Sarah was manipulating Emma, portraying herself as a sufferer and David as the villain. She was planning to take Emma away from her home, her school, her brother, everything stable in her life. But worse than the manipulation was the complete lack of genuine remorse. Sarah still saw herself as justified, still believed her actions were defensible. Prison had not changed her. It had only made her more careful about what she said to whom. Emma found David in the kitchen that evening, the letter in her hands. "You read it," she said accusingly. "You left it open on the table. That doesn't give you the right to read my private mail. Emma, we need to talk about what your mother wrote. What about it? She's trying to turn you against me. She's planning to take you away from your home, your friends, your brother. Maybe that's what I want." David studied his daughter's face. Emma was almost 17 now, just over a year from legal adulthood. She had grown beautiful like her mother, but she had also inherited Sarah's stubbornness and capacity for self-deception. "Do you really believe your mother was justified in what she did?" "I believe she made mistakes because she was desperate and scared." "Do you believe she was justified in stealing from our family to pay for her affair?" "She was trying to find happiness." "Do you believe she was justified in calling you and Tyler chess pieces?" Emma's confidence wavered slightly. She was angry when she said that. "Emma, your mother has been writing to you for 18 months. In all those letters, has she ever apologized for what she did to you specifically? Has she ever acknowledged that her actions hurt you and Tyler?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "She says she's sorry all the time. Sorry for getting caught or sorry for what she did? There's a difference." "Yes, there's a big difference." David pulled out a folder he had been keeping in his desk. Inside were copies of all the evidence from Sarah's trial, financial records, surveillance transcripts, recorded conversations. "I want you to read these," he said. "All of them. I want you to understand exactly what your mother did and why she did it. I don't want to see that stuff. You're almost an adult, Emma. You have the right to make your own decisions about your relationship with your mother. But you deserve to make those decisions based on facts, not on the version of events she's been telling you." Emma took the folder reluctantly. "This feels like you're trying to turn me against her." "I'm trying to help you see the truth. What you do with that truth is up to you." Emma spent the next week reading through the evidence. She didn't discuss it with David or Tyler, but he could see the impact on her mood. She became quiet, withdrawn, often staring into space during dinner. Finally, she came to David with tears in her eyes. "The recording where she talks about us being chess pieces," Emma said. "She wasn't angry when she said that, was she?" "No, she was calm. calculating, discussing strategy with her lover, and the money she spent on him. That was supposed to be for our college funds? Some of it, yes. Emma cried quietly for several minutes. David wanted to comfort her, but he sensed she needed space to process the truth on her own. I've been defending someone who doesn't exist, Emma said finally. The mother I've been visiting in prison isn't the same person who said those things. Your mother is complicated. She's capable of love, but she's also capable of selfishness and cruelty. The question is, which version of her is real? I think I know the answer to that. Emma didn't visit Sarah in prison again. She stopped reading her mother's letters and asked David to forward them back to the prison unopened. She began seeing her therapist more regularly and slowly started rebuilding her relationship with Tyler. But the real test came when Sarah was released on parole after serving 2 years of her sentence. She contacted Emma immediately, asking to meet and discuss their future together. Emma agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, with David's permission, but without his presence. She came home 2 hours later, looking drained but resolute. What did she say? Tyler asked. She wanted to know if I was ready to move to California with her. She said she'd found a job opportunity there, a chance for us to start over. What did you tell her? I told her I'd read all the evidence from her trial. I told her I knew exactly what she'd done and why she'd done it. How did she react? She said the evidence was taken out of context. She said Dad had manipulated the recordings to make her look bad. She said she never meant to hurt anyone, that she was just trying to survive. Emma paused, gathering her thoughts. Then I asked her to apologize. Not for getting caught, not for the situation, but specifically for calling Tyler and me chess pieces. For stealing money that was supposed to pay for our education. For betraying Dad while he was working overtime to save her life. Did she? No. She said she couldn't apologize for trying to find happiness. She said everything she did was motivated by love for us. Tyler shook his head in disgust. She still doesn't get it. No, Emma agreed. She doesn't, and I realized that the mother I've been missing, the one I've been defending, never really existed. That was just a role she played when it suited her purposes. David felt proud of his daughter's clarity, but also sad for her loss. Emma had been forced to grow up quickly, to see her mother clearly for the first time. It was a painful but necessary education. What did you tell her about California? I told her I wasn't going anywhere. This is my home. You're my family. Tyler's my family. She made her choices, and now I'm making mine. Sarah's response was swift and predictable. She hired a lawyer and filed for custody of Emma, claiming that David had brainwashed their daughter against her. She argued that her prison sentence was complete, that she had paid her debt to society, and that she deserved a chance to rebuild her relationship with her child. The custody hearing was brief. Emma, now 17 and legally able to express her preferences to the court, testified about her decision to remain with David. She spoke calmly and clearly about her mother's continuing refusal to accept responsibility for her actions. Judge Morrison, who had handled the original divorce, listened to Emma's testimony with apparent respect for the young woman's maturity. Miss Caldwell, the judge said, you understand that your mother loves you and wants to be part of your life? Yes, Your Honor, but I also understand that love isn't enough if it's not backed up by honesty and accountability. Have you been influenced by your father's feelings about your mother? Emma considered the question carefully. My father showed me evidence of what my mother did. He helped me understand the truth. But the decision to stay with him is mine alone. The judge denied Sarah's petition for custody. She granted Sarah unsupervised visitation rights, but made it clear that Emma's preferences would be respected. After the hearing, Sarah approached David in the courthouse hallway. You've turned my daughter against me, she said. I showed her the truth. She made her own decision. The truth according to you. The truth according to federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and a jury of your peers. Sarah's face twisted with rage. You think you've won, don't you? You think you've gotten your perfect revenge? David looked at the woman who had once been his wife. She was 42 now, her hair prematurely gray, her face harder than he remembered. 2 years in prison had changed her physically, but not fundamentally. She was still the person who had called their children chess pieces. This was never about revenge, Sarah. This was about consequences. What's the difference? Revenge is about hurting someone who hurt you. Consequences are about making sure actions have appropriate results. And what are the consequences for you, for destroying our family? David considered the question. He had lost his wife and nearly lost his daughter. His reputation in the community was forever linked to the scandal. He had spent tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees and private investigators, but he had also saved his son from believing that betrayal was acceptable. He had protected his daughter from a mother who saw her as a tool for manipulation. He had preserved his own integrity and taught his children that truth matters more than comfort. "The consequence for me," David said, "is that I can look at myself in the mirror. Can you say the same?" Sarah had no answer. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor of the courthouse. David never saw her again. Emma graduated high school with honors and chose to attend the state university, close enough to come home on weekends, but far enough to begin building her independence. Tyler finished his business degree and was accepted to law school, inspired by the events of the previous few years to pursue justice professionally. David's accounting practice thrived. His reputation for integrity, initially damaged by the scandal, ultimately became his greatest asset. Clients sought him out specifically because they knew he would tell them the truth, even when it was difficult to hear. 5 years after Sarah's arrest, David was working late in his office when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Caldwell? This is Detective Morrison with the San Diego Police Department. I'm calling about your ex-wife, Sarah Caldwell." David's heart raced. "What about her?" "She was arrested yesterday on charges of fraud and identity theft. She's been running a scam targeting elderly sufferers, convincing them to invest in fake real estate developments." David felt tired suddenly. "Are you calling to ask me to testify?" "Actually, we're calling because she listed you as her emergency contact. She's asking to speak with you." "I'm not her emergency contact. We've been divorced for 5 years. She insisted that you were the only person who would understand her situation." David almost laughed. Even now, even after everything, Sarah believed she could manipulate him into helping her. "Detective Morrison, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I'm not. My ex-wife is a career criminal who will never change. Don't expect her to show remorse or accept responsibility. She'll claim she was victimized, manipulated, or misunderstood. You won't speak with her?" "No, I won't. But I will testify about her history if it helps your case." David hung up and sat quietly in his office. Outside, the city was settling into evening. Lights were coming on in office buildings and homes. Families were gathering for dinner, helping children with homework, living normal lives built on trust and honesty. He thought about Emma, now thriving in college, studying to become a teacher. He thought about Tyler, passionate about justice, and determined to use his law degree to help people who had been betrayed as his family had been betrayed. He thought about Sarah, sitting in another jail cell, probably crafting another story about how she was the sufferer of circumstances beyond her control. Some people never changed. Some people were fundamentally incapable of accepting responsibility for their actions. Sarah was one of those people, but others did change. Emma had learned to see past manipulation to truth. Tyler had learned that integrity was more valuable than comfort. David had learned that sometimes the hardest thing to do was also the right thing to do. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, just wanted to say I love you and I'm proud of you. See you this weekend." David smiled and packed up his briefcase. It was time to go home. He drove through the familiar streets of his neighborhood, past houses where he'd lived his entire adult life. Some neighbors still avoided eye contact, still believed he had been too harsh with Sarah. Others had come to understand that he had simply refused to be complicit in his own destruction. David parked in his driveway and looked at his house. It was smaller than the dreams he'd once shared with Sarah, but it was honest. It was built on truth, rather than deception, on consequences, rather than excuses. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Tyler was at the kitchen table, studying for his law school entrance exams. He looked up when David entered. "How was work?" Tyler asked. "Sarah was arrested again, fraud and identity theft in San Diego." Tyler nodded without surprise. "What did you tell them?" "That she'll never change, and that I won't help her anymore." "Good." David hung up his coat and joined his son at the kitchen table. Tyler's textbooks were spread across the surface, preparation for a career built on the principle that actions have consequences. "Any regrets?" Tyler asked, echoing the question Gina Fletcher had posed years earlier. David thought about the question that had haunted him for years. Had he been too harsh, too unforgiving? Had he chosen revenge over reconciliation? But then he thought about Emma, strong and independent, capable of recognizing manipulation and choosing truth over comfort. He thought about Tyler, determined to build a career on justice and integrity. He thought about his own ability to sleep peacefully, knowing he had never compromised his principles. "No," David said finally. "No regrets." Tyler returned to his studies. David opened his laptop and began working on client files, building a business based on honesty and accountability. Outside, the city continued its evening routine. Somewhere in San Diego, Sarah was probably crafting another story about victimization and circumstances beyond her control. But here, in this small house built on truth rather than deception, life continued with quiet dignity. The phone rang. The caller ID showed Emma's number. "Hi, sweetheart," David answered. "Dad, I just heard about Mom. Tyler texted me." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm not surprised. Are you okay?" David smiled. His daughter's first concern was for him, not for the woman who had called her a chess piece. "I'm fine too. Better than fine, actually." "Good. I'll see you this weekend. I'm bringing someone I want you to meet." "Oh?" "His name is Michael. He's in my education program. He's a lot like you. Honest, hardworking, reliable." David felt a warmth spread through his chest. Emma had learned to value the right qualities in people. "I look forward to meeting him." After Emma hung up, David sat quietly in his kitchen. Tyler was absorbed in his studies, preparing for a career in justice. Emma was building a life with someone who shared her father's values. The family that Sarah had tried to destroy had been rebuilt, stronger and more honest than before. David returned to his work. He had clients to serve, bills to pay, a life to live. It was a simple life, but it was his life, built on his terms, according to his principles. The house was quiet except for the soft sound of Tyler turning pages in his textbook. It was the sound of a family that had survived betrayal and emerged stronger. It was the sound of consequences finally being served.